I've seen some disturbing comments online over the last few days talking about or suggesting that the Canadian federal government shouldn't be looking to support Canada's energy sector during this time of crisis. And that really concerns me. So I want to break down what the low price of oil means for somebody who maybe thinks this way, what it means to them, and why this support needs to come through. So let's start with the price of oil today. So based on what I'm seeing right now, West Texas Intermediate, and that's sort of one of the benchmarks that people price oil at, is at $22.72 American a barrel. And our oil that we produce in Alberta, Western Canadian Select, is at $7.23 a barrel. So this is very, very low, and I'm going to get to how low it is in a second, but I want to tell you what's happening first. So in the middle of the COVID crisis, Saudi Arabia and Russia got into a price war. So, and I'm looking to the side here because I've got some notes that I want to refer to. So OPEC is a cartel of 15 oil producing countries, and Russia's not part of OPEC, but several years ago agreed to coordinate production with OPEC. And long story short, Russia disagreed with Saudi on some production issues recently, and essentially they're in a price war now. And what that has done is two things. It has driven down the price of oil over time, a very short period of time. And also at the same time, the COVID crisis has decreased demand for energy products because obviously we're staying at home, we're self-isolating, international travel has decreased. So the price of oil has significantly decreased in a very short period of time. And many people have asked, well, how long is this going to last? Experts believe that the price war between Riyadh or Saudi Arabia and Moscow will last throughout 2020. And I'm citing a couple of news articles that have come out in recent weeks on that. So this isn't something that is, going to be gone in a short period of time. This is what many analysts are considering the new normal. So this is why it matters. So I'm just going to pull my screen down here. So last year's federal budget, every year the federal budget has estimates on prices of different commodities so that we can project revenue, right? So last year's federal budget projected that West Texas Intermediate, the North American benchmark crude, would be at $60 US a barrel. And again, for reference today, WTI sits at $22.72. And so if you look in the forecast for the federal budget 2019, the forecast for 2020 was, I'm looking at it, I think it was $57 a barrel. So that's a huge delta. That's a huge price difference between what the government thought they were going to get for revenue of oil versus what they're actually going to get, especially if this price war continues over the duration of the year, which many analysts are saying that it's going to happen. If we look in the context of the Alberta provincial budget, which was tabled only a few short weeks ago, was at the end of February, the Alberta budget this year was written on the assumption that oil would stand at $58 a barrel based on United States dollars, West Texas Intermediate. And analysts are saying that for every dollar that the price of oil drops below this, the province estimates that provincial coffers lose $355 million. So that is, I'm quoting a National Post article. So based on that assumption, and here's the kicker, this is what it means to you. At today's price, if it is sustained over a long period of time, oil has dropped over $36 a barrel from where Alberta's 2020 provincial budget said it would be, meaning a $12.5 billion shortfall in projected revenue if these prices remain sustained over the course of the budgetary year. And this, of course, this is without even having to figure out or calculate in any of the measures that the province has had to take for additional spending related to the COVID crisis. So if you kick that up from the provincial level and you look at the fact that the same sort of delta exists in the federal government's budgetary projections, think about that for a second. So not only is the government looking at a significant drop in the price of oil and revenue this year, they've also, we're in the middle of a serious crisis. They're having to spend a lot more than they were projected, and in a significant order of magnitude. So the price of oil has significantly dropped our revenue while we've significantly had to increase our spending. So I want to talk to you about what happens next and the crisis that's happening in Alberta related to this from a production perspective, because many people aren't talking about this right now. So in 2019, the Alberta Energy Regulator and the Canadian Energy Research Institute determined that the price per barrel at which the oil sands break-even point is as low as $52 a barrel, and that's again WTI. So think about that. So the price that producers who are producing oil that they're just breaking even at is $52 a barrel, and today it's at $22 a barrel. So producers are producing at a loss, and we're also selling at a loss internationally because we don't get the world price for our oil because we don't have pipeline infrastructure that allows us to sell to other world markets. We normally just take a price from the Americans, and that's why pipeline infrastructure was so critical. So I've seen some social media commentary saying like, well, who cares? Let's just shut off the taps, whatever. Okay, so you have to understand that in Canada, we largely produce oil in two ways. One is through mining or access to shallow oil in the ground, so that's mining. And then there's in situ, right? And that is accessing deeper deposit with technology that essentially injects steam into the ground and pushes it back up. Way oversimplified, I know. So what happens, so for some people who are saying, well, why can't we just shut the taps off? Well, here's the problem. The technology that we need to, in that second scenario, the in situ technology, you can't just shut it off. I won't get into the whole technical explanation on it, but production has to be maintained at a certain level in order for that play or that asset to be viable over the long term. So for example, it's kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it. And these are strategic assets for Canada, not just in terms of revenue generation, but also in terms of energy security. So we need to make sure that we are, over time, ensuring that production capacity stays there. But here's the problem on top of it. Producers are losing money big time right now. People aren't buying our oil, or anyone's oil actually, because of the price and because of the lack of demand, but we're also running out of storage capacity. So at a certain point in time, policymakers are going to have to look at that storage capacity, the need for us to keep those assets going so that we don't lose it, and deal with the fact that we have a significant budgetary shortfall. But it's not just about budget. There are also hundreds of thousands of people in Canada whose livelihoods depend on the energy sector. And those people were already suffering before the COVID crisis came into play. And why is that? You've seen me give many videos about this. The Liberal government has had a political agenda to ensure that energy infrastructure hasn't been built out over time. Bill C-69, C-48, the veto of Northern Gateway, the regulatory environment ensuring that Energy East wasn't built out. So we're now in a situation where we should have been on top of this 5 years ago, and we're not now. And now we have this huge problem. So this is why it is absolutely incumbent upon the federal government to provide support to the energy sector, to make sure that we're not losing those strategic assets, that we are working with provincial regulators, with the energy sector, to make sure that those assets stay in play over time, because that has to be part of the calculation of our revenue of our country, especially in the short and medium term, given everything that's happened right now. So what are some of the things that the government should be doing going forward? And again, Parliament is sitting this week, and I really hope that the federal government, that the ministers will speak to some of these things. First of all, we have to recognize that this is a serious problem, and that the sector needs support in this period of time, that these are strategic resources that provide employment to many Canadians and provide energy security to our country. It needs support, regardless of where you feel or where you sit on this divide or on this issue, this sector needs support, and it needs it right now. And the other thing that needs to be recognized is that many people in Alberta were already in a precarious position prior to this issue happening. We also have to look at when the government is doing their forecasts, we have to make sure that we're showing this delta that's happening by this precipitous drop in pricing, and the budget that we're putting forward for the next period of time. We also need to make sure that, you know, people who are across the country trying to make ends meet are able to stay as liquid as possible in a very short period of time. And tomorrow when I come to you on a video, I'm going to give you the list of questions that are outstanding to the federal government with regard to how they're trying to deliver these services. But what I want to emphasize, and if you can share this video or talk to anybody who might be saying, wow, the oil should just stay in the ground. This drop actually shows into the future what everybody who's been campaigning against the energy sector actually wanted to happen. And it shows a bankrupt country. And that's a problem. It also shows a country where we're in a situation where we're having to talk about curtailment of certain types of energy sector assets just because we don't even have room to store this stuff. And that's a big problem. So the federal government needs to get on top of this, and we need to make sure that there's support for the energy sector so that they can adequately manage through this so that we don't have a bigger problem on the back end of it. Please share this video. Please implore your member of parliament, whoever you can, that this is something that needs to be paid attention to, not in 3 months from now, but this week in this session of parliament on Tuesday. Working hard for you. Have a great day.